Hey everyone, just wanted to come back and make a quick video about what I've been led to over the last couple days. This week we've been on super high watch. I find it incredible that both 7/11 days um, in the current Jewish calendar and in the what I believe to be the real Jewish calendar have led to some very memorable events, that being the Vegas shooting on Tishri 11 and this Halloween, the deadliest attack since 9/11 in New York. In my um, original 7/11 warning video, I did have a snapshot of the One World Trade Center memorial, which is interesting that that's actually around where the attack happened. So pretty interesting because my dream was definitely about something memorable happening in relation to the number 11. Um, and I know there's other things to be on high watch for here. I have received a lot of confirmations on this 411 number. If you take November 4th and do it the way the rest of the world puts it, the date format, it's 411. Um, I I actually woke up at 4:11 a.m. on all of these dates here. These are recent, October 29th, which is last weekend, and 11:40, which is 4:11 backwards, October 28th, the day before. One thing that I really haven't heard anybody talking about that happens this week is Guy Fawkes night, which is on November 5th. I've had several confirmations on this day being significant. So I had a dream last week where I was outside um, in like a small shack, and the door was open, and there were three women and myself, and um, we were kind of like in a line into this little hut, and three of us, I think I was the last one, but I know that Amanda Christian from YouTube, she has her own channel, was there. And I was the last one, so there were four of us. I was the third one in the line, and we just ended up closing the door on the fourth person. So three of us were able to stay in the shack, and the reason was that it was just too late. There was not enough time for the last person to come in, or they didn't make it somehow. So we shut the door. I wasn't the last one to get in, and then we started looking out like a small window of the shack, and Amanda was using her finger and just turning it in a circle. And it was kind of like a sparkler. So I thought that was interesting because when I was researching Guy Fawkes night, um, I saw something that looked just like what I saw in the dream about a week ago, and this is what Amanda was doing with her finger. Um, the rest of us were looking outside this little window, and she was just, this is obviously with a little kids using the sparkler, but she was just doing this. It was coming straight out of her finger. Poem that they recite on this night is Remember, Remember the 5th of November. That's how it starts. So my dream was about something memorable. It is the 11th month of November. So that was interesting that actually came to me in another dream. That was it. That was that. I woke up as soon as, when she was still doing the finger as a sparkler. And then also when I was preparing this content for this video today, the fireworks went off in preparation for this event. I'm here in London, so it's Thursday, but it's going to be, I guess, on Sunday. So I wasn't expecting fireworks tonight on Thursday. My dog was all freaked out, and they probably had like 4 or 5 really strong rounds going, so that was interesting. Um, so I found a really interesting article about how that is relevant to the King James Bible. So it says here that the celebration of November 5th outdoes our 4th of July. There's all kinds of bonfire societies, and the history is that there's this Gunpowder Plot that for which Fawkes was executed. But if he actually had not been found, if he actually succeeded in his plot, we would have a very different Bible today. So because this was back in 1605, which was just 6 years before the publication of the King James Bible. So King James had been petitioned by the Puritans to authorize the translation of a new and completely accurate English Bible. And that's why he went through the commissioning of over 50 scholars from Oxford and Cambridge to begin the work. And they were chosen as the most learned of their day in linguistics, but also biblical theology, and many of them are fluent in up to 14 languages. So all of this was happening in the middle of the battle between the leaders of the Reformation and the Vatican, and the Bible was the price in that war. For over 100 years, the reformers had fought to print the Bible in the language of the people. The Vatican had commissioned the Jesuits and the Dominicans with the task of destroying those Bibles. Politics had become one of the battlefields, with the rulers of England alternating between Protestant and Catholics. At this point, King James was Protestant and almost literally had a bullseye on his back. Jesuit agents cooked the Gunpowder Plot to tunnel under the Parliament building and set off massive explosive while it was in session. Their hope was to kill King James and as many of the members of Parliament as possible. So Guy Fawkes was enlisted by the Pope to carry out the plan. In their attempt, they met many problems. So during their digging, they hit an unexpected wall. In their attempts, they had a bunch of different problems, so they actually delayed their plans for a while. But finally, the last thing that got them caught was one of the men wrote a letter warning a Catholic friend to stay away from the building on a certain date. The letter ended up in the hands of the king, who discovered the scheme just hours before the targeted meeting. So November 5th is now a national day of thanksgiving for deliverance from papists. Coming up this Sunday is the 15th day of what I believe to be Tishri, the second month. Look at my previous videos if you need information on that. The month before here, you can see the 15th is the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. So that would fall on the second day. The next year, in 1606, they created in the United Kingdom the Thanksgiving Act. In 1606, to celebrate that annual Thanksgiving for the failure of the plot. So then that means that in November 5th, 1606 is when the first Thanksgiving celebration occurred, which is interesting because if you plug that in, the first celebration, to this year, 2017, it comes out to 411 years. Exactly. So this year we are celebrating for the 411th time. So that's very interesting. Now, back in 1606, that was the Julian calendar in effect back then. So I don't know, there's a gap here with 13 days because of the Gregorian, I don't know. Another point of interest is that the Guy Fawkes mask is kind of being used in the modern for a symbol of any kind of protest. So this is what the mask looks like. It's probably most popularized by Anonymous, but it's actually being used in a lot more areas. So, the origin is from that Gunpowder Plot, referring to Guy Fawkes. And I guess since the release of this film V for Vendetta in 2006, the use of these Fawkes masks has become widespread internationally among groups protesting against all sorts of things: politicians, banks, financial institutions. They conceal the identity and protect the face of individuals and demonstrate the commitment to a shared cause. So here you see Anonymous and other protests for MPs, protests in Wisconsin, Occupy used it. In India, they've used it. In the Arab Spring, Barani uprising. It's banned in Saudi Arabia. So it's quite a wide, varied use. They actually tried to release this V for Vendetta film on November 4th, a day before the 400th Guy Fawkes night. It's been seen as an allegory of oppression by government. Libertarians and anarchists have used it to promote their beliefs. The writer of the film says that it's become a common brand and a convenient placard to use in protest against tyranny. So it's interesting because this film is in some alternative future where a neo-fascist regime has taken over. And, this is coming now, more than 10 years later, that we have Antifa, and they're, also using masks, different ones, but covering their face, similar concept, and it's just one day before, just like when they were trying to release this in the 400th anniversary. So that's interesting. But here, the protest is against tyranny. Tyranny being fascism. What Guy Fawkes was doing, he was, it was Jesuit treason. He was a Catholic that was trying to assassinate the Protestant king, who was the one that gave us the King James Bible, which, to me, that's the 411. That's the information. That's the Word of God. So I find it just kind of unfortunate that they're using these masks for this, treasonous guy that was plotting against the Word of God, and claiming it to be protesting for a good cause. So it doesn't seem right. I don't look at his name as well. It's used today to indicate a man, a fellow, a person, individual, a creature, and it didn't really exist back in the days. Even the name Guy was relatively rare in England, and he actually ended up going by the name Guido instead. So his name was he had kind of evolved to mean effigy, which is like a little figurine that you destroy. So it wasn't a pejorative sense to describe a man, like a bad guy. And if you look at the noun, one of the definitions is a rope or line fixed to the ground to secure a tent or other structure. Isn't that interesting? Tent. I mean, given that the 5th of November is on the 16th, which would correspond to Tishri 16, which would be the second day of Tabernacles, if you agree that we're a month off. And then his last name comes from Fawkes, meaning falcon. I had a look in the Bible, and it really only has a few references. The one that I found the most interesting was Job 28. That path no bird knows, nor has the falcon's eye seen it. And this is Job 28, where it's speaking about the search for God's wisdom. Job and his friends had been discoursing about the dispensations of providence towards the wicked and the righteous. Job had shown that some wicked men live and die in prosperity, while others are presently and openly arrested by the judgments of God. But if any ask the reason why some are punished in this world and not others, they must be told it is a question that cannot be answered. And they refer to the falcon as with other fowls here. The knowledge of God's secret will, the will of his providence, is out of our reach, and what God has reserved to himself. It belongs to the Lord our God to know the particulars of what God will do hereafter, and the reasons of what he is doing now is the knowledge that Job first speaks of. This knowledge is hidden from us, it is high, we cannot attain unto it. It is hid from the eyes of all living, even of philosophers, politicians, and saints. It is kept close from the fowls of the air. That's where the falcon comes into play here. Though they fly high and in the open firmament of heaven, though they seem somewhat nearer that the upper world where our source of wisdom is, though their eyes behold afar off, yet they cannot penetrate into the counsels of God. No man is wiser than the fowls of heaven, and yet come short of this wisdom. Even those who in their particulars, in their speculations soar highest and think themselves like the fowls of the air, above the heads of other people, yet cannot pretend to this knowledge. So really the final point in this whole chapter is, then he saw wisdom and declared it. He prepared it indeed. He searched it out. And to man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding.